Shalom, everybody, and good morning. And it is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Praise our wonderful Creator for this wonderful feast. And we celebrated our Passover dinner last night, and we're going to be reading a different Bible reading every day for the feast here, and what it is to be, as it says in the scriptures. Yahweh's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month, on the 15th day of the month. The Feast of Unleavened Bread begins for 7 days, so you must eat bread made without yeast. Leviticus 23, 5 and 6. So we read here over and over the importance of eating the bread, but this isn't about bread. This is about getting the leaven out of our lives, getting the sin out of our lives, and purifying our lives. So we're going to read, and it's all about Yeshua, the blood of Messiah, covering us. So we're going to start off today with 3 readings we're going to do. The first one we're going to read is talk about the first Passover in Exodus 12. We're going to be reading verses 21 to 51. It says, Then Moses called the elders of Israel together and said to them, Go pick out a lamb or a young goat for each of your families and slaughter the Passover animal. Drain the blood into the basin, then take the bundle of hyssop branches and dip it into the blood. Brush the hyssop across the top of the sides of the door frames of your house. And no one may go through the door until the morning. Verse 23. For Yahweh will pass through the land and strike down the Egyptians. But when he sees the blood on the top of the sides of the door frame, Yahweh will pass over your home. He will not permit his death angel to enter your house and strike you down. Remember, these instructions are a permanent law that you and your descendants must observe forever. When you enter the land Yahweh has promised to give you, you will continue to observe this ceremony. Then your children will ask, What does this ceremony mean? And you will reply, It is the Passover sacrifice to Yahweh. For he passed over the house of the Israelites in Egypt. And though he struck the Egyptians, he spared our families. When Moses had finished speaking, all the people bowed down to the ground and worshipped. So the people of Israel did just as Yahweh had commanded through Moses and Aaron. And that night at midnight, Yahweh struck down all the firstborn sons of the land of Egypt, from the firstborn sons of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn son of the prisoner in the dungeon. Even the firstborn of their livestock were killed. Pharaoh and all his officials and all the people of Egypt woke up during the night, and a loud wailing was heard throughout the land of Egypt. There was not a single house where someone had not died. In verse 31, Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron during the night. Get out, he ordered. Leave my people and take the rest of the Israelites with you. Go and worship Yahweh as you requested. Take your flocks and all your herds, as you said, and be gone. Go. But then he said, Well, wait, but bless me first before you leave, but bless me as you leave. And all Egyptians urged the people of Israel to get out of the land quickly as possible, for they thought, We will all die. Verse 34. The Israelites took their bread and dough before the yeast was added. They wrapped their kneeling boards and cloaks and carried them on their shoulders. And the people of Israel did as Moses had instructed. They asked the Egyptians for clothing and articles of silver and gold. Yahweh caused the Egyptians to look favorably on the Israelites, and they gave the Israelites whatever they asked for. So they stripped the Egyptians of all their wealth. That night, the people of Israel left Rameses and started for Sukkot. There were about 600,000 men, plus all the women and children. A rebel of non-Israelites went with them, along with great flocks and herds of livestock. For the bread they baked, flat cakes from the dough without yeast they had brought from Egypt. It was made without yeast because the people were driven out of the land in such a hurry that they had no time to prepare the bread or other food. The people of Israel had lived in Egypt for 430 years. In fact, it was on the last day of the 430th year that all of Yahweh's forces left the land. On this night, Yahweh kept his promise to his people out of the land of Egypt, to bring his people out of the land of Egypt. So this night belongs to him, and it must be commemorated every year by the Israelites from generation to generation. Then Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, these are the instructions of the festival for Passover. No outsiders are allowed to eat the Passover meal, but any slave who has been purchased may eat it if he had been circumcised. Temporary residents and hired servants may not eat it. Each Passover lamb must be eaten in one house. Do not carry any of its meat outside, and do not break any of its bones. Those whose community of Israel must celebrate, the whole community of Israel must celebrate the Passover festival. Verse 48 reads, if there are foreigners living among you who want to celebrate Yahweh's Passover, let all the males be circumcised. Only then may they celebrate the Passover with you like any native-born Israelite. But no uncircumcised male may ever eat the Passover meal. This instruction applies to everyone, whether a native-born Israelite or foreigner living among you. Verse 50. So all the people of Israel followed all Yahweh's commands to Moses and Aaron. On that very day, Yahweh brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt like an army. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. All right. The next reading we're going to do is Joshua 3, verses 5 and 7. Joshua 3, verse 5 and 7 says, then Joshua told the people, purify yourselves, for tomorrow Yahweh will do great wonders among you. In the morning, Joshua said to the priests, lift up the ark of the covenant and lead the people across the river. And also they started out and went ahead of the people. Yahweh told Joshua, today I will begin to make you a great leader in the eyes of all the Israelites. They will know that I am with you, just as I was with Moses. And then next we read Joshua 5:2 to 6:1. Israel reestablishing the covenant ceremonies. At that time, Yahweh told Joshua, make a flint knives and circumcise the second generation of Israelites. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the entire male population of Israel at Glemith Haroth. Joshua had to circumcise them because all the men who were old enough to fight in battle when they left Egypt had died in the wilderness. Those who left Egypt had been circumcised, but none of those born after the Exodus during the years in the wilderness had been circumcised. The Israelites have traveled in the wilderness for 40 years until all the men who were old enough to fight in battle when they left Egypt had died. For they had disobeyed Yahweh, and Yahweh vowed he would not let them enter the land he had sworn to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So Joshua circumcised their sons, those who had grown up to take their father's places. For they had not been circumcised on the way to the promised land. After all the males had been circumcised, they rested in the camp until they were healed. Then Yahweh said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the shame of your slavery in Egypt. So that place has been called Gilgal to this day. While the Israelites were camped at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, they celebrated Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the first month. The very next day they began to eat unleavened bread and roasted grain harvested from the land. No manna appeared on the day they first ate from the crops of the land, and it was never seen again. So from that time on, the Israelites ate from the crops of Canaan. Verse 13. When Joshua was near the town of Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a sword in hand. Joshua went up to him and demanded, are you a friend or foe? Neither one, he replied. I am the commander of Yahweh's army. At this, Joshua fell with his face to the ground in reverence. I am at your command, Joshua said. What do you want your servant to do? The commander of Yahweh's army replied, take off your sandals. The place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did as he was told. And then we see here, as we read here, verse 6, chapter 6, verse 1. Now the gates of Jericho were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. No one was allowed to go out or in. So that's our first reading here for this year, reading of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And now we're going to do a little reading about Yeshua, our wonderful Messiah. I'm going to read this. Each of the four Gospels tell a different story of Yeshua's final days on earth. Each Gospel adds new and insightful information to our understanding. Read this story over the 8 days of unleavened bread and the week leading up, the week leading up to Passover. So we're going to read. Lazarus raised from the dead. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary, and her sister Martha. Yeshua loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Yet when he heard Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. On his arrival, Yeshua found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Lord, Martha said to Yeshua, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know not that even Yahweh will give you whatever you ask. Yeshua said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. And Yeshua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of Yahweh, who was to come to the world. When Mary reached the place where Yeshua was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Yeshua saw her weeping, and the Jewish people who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, they replied. Yeshua wept. Wow, Yeshua wept. Then the Jewish people said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Yeshua, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. He was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Take away the stone, he said. But Yahweh said, Martha. But Martha said, Lord, she's the sister of the dead man. By this time there will be a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days. Then Yeshua said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of Yahweh? She took away the stone, and then Yeshua looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe you sent me. He who had said this, Yeshua called a loud voice when he said this, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, and his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen, and taken and cloth around his face. Yeshua said to him, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Therefore, many of the Jewish people had come to visit Mary and seen what Yeshua did, put their faith in him. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing? They asked. Here is this man performing many miraculous signs. If we let him go like this, everyone will believe him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. Then one of them, named Cyprus, who was high priest at the year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year. He prophesied that Yeshua would die for the Jewish nation, and not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of Yahweh, to bring together and make them one. 6 days before the Passover, Yeshua arrived in Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Yeshua had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Yeshua's honor. Martha served while Lazarus was amongst those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure a pure nard and expensive perfume, and she poured it on Yeshua's feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with a fragrance of perfume. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As a keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it. Leave her alone, Yeshua replied. It was inclined that she would save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Meanwhile, a large crowd followed Yeshua. And came not out only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. For on account of him, many of the Jewish people were going over to Yeshua and putting their faith in him. Now the crowd was with him when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead. Continued to spread word. Many people, because they had heard that he had given this miraculous sign, went to meet him. As they approached Jerusalem, Yeshua sent 2 disciples, saying, Go to the village ahead of you. At once you will find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, tell him that Yahweh needs them and that he will send them right away. This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to the daughter of Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. The disciples went and did as Yeshua had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt, placed their cloaks on them, and Yeshua sat on them. The great crowd that had come for the feast heard Yeshua was on his way to Jerusalem. They agreed to spread their cloaks on the floor on the road while cut branches from the tree spread over them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. Hosanna is the highest. Blessed is the King of Israel. Yeshua replied, the hour has come for my son, the Son of Man, to be glorified. I tell you the truth. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. Now my heart is troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No. It was this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from heaven. I have glorified it and will glorify it again. The crowd that was there and heard it said it had thundered. Others said an angel had spoken to him. Yeshua said, now it is the time for judgment on this world, and the prince of the world will be driven out. But when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all men to myself, he said. This is to show the kind of death he was going to die. The crowd spoke up. We have heard from the Torah that Yeshua, the Messiah, would remain forever. So how can you say the Son of Man will be lifted up? Who is this Son of Man? Then Yeshua told them, you are going to have a light just as you are going to have the light just a little while longer. Walk while you have light before darkness overtakes you. Put your trust in Yahweh while you have it. Yeshua entered the temple area and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. It is written, he said, let my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. The chief priests and the teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill him. For they feared him because the whole crowd was amazed at his teachings. The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the teachers of the Torah saw the wonderful things he did and the children shouting in the temple area, Hosanna, the Son of David, they were ignorant to hear what these children are saying?" They asked him. "Yes," replied Yeshua. "Have you never read, from the lips of the children and the infants you have ordained praise?" He left them and went out to the city, to Bethany, where he spent the night. And that is the reading of the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And we'll be reading more each day. And praise our wonderful Creator for this wonderful time and this holy Sabbath day as this first day. So Yah be with you all. Have a blessed day today. Have a great Sabbath rest. And to focus on Yeshua passing over us with his blood and covering us with his blood and keeping us safe. Have a blessed day, everybody. Yahweh be with you all, and shalom, shalom.